I remember being in a conference with Selwyn Hughes, actually, from which I've been using a few thoughts from his Encourager Bible. But it was a conference about prayer, and he said, got us to split into little groups and see if we could come up with a definition for prayer. And I remember at the time sort of having a little moment and having the revelation that prayer is actually my act of dependency upon God to do it. However I pray, with or without words, it's also an activity. It's an act of my will, my mind, and my emotions to say, God, I can't do this without you. And I want us to think about prayer, not just praying in times of trouble. I know the Bible says, doesn't it, if in James, if any of you are suffering, you should pray. Or first, it says in Timothy, first of all, I urge you in your petitions and prayers and intercessions and thanksgiving for everyone. And it goes on to say that if any of you are in trouble or having difficulty, to pray. And I think sometimes people only pray when they are in trouble, and that's a very shallow level of prayer. Ironically, though, it's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes people say it's the last thing that they do when they're sort of under pressure and in, sort of having a time of difficulty. It's not often the first thing that they do to pray. It's often the last thing that they do. And of course, when they do, they find the trouble is brought into perspective. And I think that's what prayer does. It brings life back into perspective, that it's not about me and my ability to live life, but it's all about God and his superabundant ability to live life. We know, don't we, that Jesus said in John 10:10, I've come that you might have life and have it to the full. That word full is really full in the Greek. It's a superabundance, overflowing, an outflowing of a life that has an energy all of its own. It's not dependent upon the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And that's the life that we can begin to live when we connect to God in prayer. That we're saying, I can't, you can. I can't live this life. My prayer and my attitude is an act of dependency upon you, God, to do it. So as you live out the rest of your life, it needs to be done in an act of dependency upon God, and not saying, I can do this all on my own. Be encouraged.